Good afternoon, refiners, if there are indeed any of us left. It's Miscellaneous Gab, and welcome back to another episode of Craziest Severance Theories. These are getting intense, these are getting specific. We're gonna talk over yours and my craziest theories and predictions for the finale, which is just over 48 hours away. I feel like each and every week we are able to cancel out certain theories. Before we begin, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment about what you anticipate will happen in the finale. Speaking of finale, I will be going live about an hour and 20 minutes before the finale, and I will have a special guest with me this week. Everybody say hello to HaxDogma. Go make sure you're subscribed to him and join in to hear us talk through what's gonna happen in the finale. All right, episode 9 was a table clearing or setting episode that really set the stage for episode 10. However, what's going to happen is still very unclear compared to where we were this point in season 1. If you recall, in season 1, episode 8, because there were 9 episodes, we already knew that the OTC was on its way to being triggered. That left the finale to be the corresponding events after that trigger. So although we didn't know exactly what would happen, we knew that we were about to meet all of the Innies' Outtie selves and learn more about them. With the exception of finally figuring out what actually is Cold Harbor, I really don't know. Anything can happen, but one thing that I think will happen is that this episode will be violent. There's an MA 15+ rating for blood and gore on this episode, so I think somebody will die, or somebody's. While I think we will find out what Cold Harbor is, I think we'll get a little bit more closure on where Milkshake is headed. I think we're gonna get some Helly, some more Jame, obviously some more Mark and Cobel. I don't know if we will get Irving and Dylan. I really hope Gemma doesn't die. I do think long term it probably doesn't look good for her. I think maybe they will stop her from going into Cold Harbor. The Cold Harbor file could be completed, but she doesn't quite go in. If we recall from season 1, it does take a couple days to process the file after it's complete. And I could also see it being completed. I could see Gemma dying, and I could see season 3 being all about Mark's revenge to take down the company, joining up with other severed employees, using Irving's research to really take down the company because they cost him his wife. I do think Helly will go to the testing floor, whether by force or by choice. Now, like I said, this episode is rated MA 15+ for blood and gore. What does that mean? According to a member of my Patreon family, Randall Sterling, it might mean that there is indeed a Macrodata Uprising. Perhaps what's left of MDR will join forces with the GOAT, Mammalians, Nurturable, as well as OND. When Mark gave that unity speech to Brienne of GOAT, they really seem to have this moment of unity and bonding for the Innies. I do hope that Mr. Drummond or Mr. Mauer, especially Mr. Mauer, are one of the people who are taken down in whatever uprising rebellion. According to Raspberry on Patreon, about Gemma, I think she goes into the Cold Harbor room and they try to transfer her consciousness to another body. I think we are left with a cliffhanger if it worked or not and if Gemma survived or not. I still think consciousness transfer is possible here, unless the goats are a red herring. I do think they're trying to either refine consciousness, transfer it. If Cold Harbor actually works and Gemma is able to overcome the fear of death, which may be drowning in her case, that they will have a purified severance chip that maybe they can put into other people. Now, the whole uploaded consciousness and reviving Kier, I was a big fan of some of these theories at the beginning, but I just don't feel like we've had as many hints to them. Never say never. About Devon, I think we learned some surprising stuff about Devon when we see her and Cobel and Mark at the cabin. The jury is still out if she is pro or anti-Lumon because they have given us lots of clues so far for supporting both sides. But when you look back at the flashback in season 2, episode 7, with Ricken and Mark and Gemma and her, the other 3 have changed a lot. So to think that she has not changed at all doesn't seem likely. About Helly, I think it is Helly R, not Helena, that Jame talks to at the end of season 2, episode 9. I think the trailer scene of Helly in the export hall elevator will play out as Helly being taken or forced to go down to the testing floor by Jame. So totally agree on Helly. I do hope it is of her own free will, but she does look kind of freaked out in the intro. In terms of Devon, I am very pro Devon is just a big sister. I know a lot of people disagree with me, and I would be happy to be proven wrong. I do think the whole trusting of Cobel is very wonky and very unbelievable in some ways. This is some of the biggest issue I have with this season, but I respect the writers and the storytelling, and I won't drag it until it comes to fruition. So maybe there's a misdirect going on here. They are desperate. According to Jim Rodney, funny how after the After Hours with the Twilight Zone episode mannequins coming to life storyline, and everyone assuming Gemma may be some kind of mannequin who came to life for a limited period, or even Helly, when Severance already gave us quite an obvious room full of literal mannequins, which was the perpetuity wing. They have a mannequin of every Lumon CEO from Kier to Jame, and that creepy shot of the Kier statue mannequin turning his head to look right at the camera is telling us that those mannequins come to life at some point, or someone's having some wicked fever dream of Kier due to reintegration sickness. I love this. I think that the mannequins and even the idea that there may be animatronic mannequins in a different Lumon office. Now I see a weird similarity crossover between the mannequins and the twins from the Ortbo. I feel like the idea of twins is a strong motif, especially with Dylan and the door guy, and that hasn't totally come to fruition yet. However, this does bring up an interesting point with the mannequins and Gemma. If you recall when I discussed briefly about the Twilight Zone episode mentioned, it's about a mannequin that goes out into the real world and has no memory of the fact that she's really a mannequin. She has 1 month to live as a human. Now this kind of brings it back to when Helly called Gemma Hannah, and you kind of wonder if Hannah is the real identity of the woman. What if she has been raised since a baby to be grown in a lab as this person? What if Gemma in the real world was just another identity and was proof that they could erase all of her memories or program her to have a different identity, and her goal was to live like a normal person, to meet Mark? What if it is Hannah and Gemma replaced her, and the whole goal for Cold Harbor is one, can they raise a person but completely destroy all of their memories and implant them with the identity of somebody else and then refine their tempers? We still don't know what babies mean. We know there's something about rebirth, babies, baby Kier, there's babies flying out of Mark's bed. There might be bastard children running around. Lumon is not above using children for child labor in a variety of circumstances, but perhaps there is a bigger push to harm or sever children and run further experiments on them. Maybe one of James means that severed employees are getting pregnant, being taken to the birth cabin to give birth, and then their babies are being taken away from them and potentially brought back to Lumon for severing or further testing temper balancing. Now we got a long one from Cass's Twisted, as always, very insightful. Big world stuff. We will find out that Jame is Kier, who has been alive all this time because of the magic water in the water tower / pond. Revolving is him taking a dip and becoming an infant again. Explains baby Kier in the opening credits. He did this in 1939 and is set to do it again soon. He is delaying because he doesn't trust Helena to run the company. I have not heard any whisper of this theory that water tower being some fountain of youth special elixir. That would explain a lot. Jame is not normal. Jame is not normal. Whether he is Kier, indeed reincarnated, we know he talks like he's from the 19th century. I also hate him. Cold Harbor is testing the chip with the fear of death. They drown Gemma. I'm guessing Mark makes it in time to save her. Dr. Maurer is going to die. Well, I hope Dr. Maurer is going to die, and I think either Cass or somebody else mentioned, what if Helly is able to go in and save her? We already know that Helena is a decent swimmer. Maybe that innate skill of swimming will kick in and Helly will save Gemma. The blood-soaked fight that earned a MA 15+ rating. Drummond will assault Mark, but Milchick has been demoted. I guess there's a shot of him wearing a white shirt and a tie, which means he's no longer in his Harmony Cobel fit. Milchick fights Drummond. I think there will be blood, lots of blood. I mean, he is a big man. Real Enigmas calls him evil Hodor, so a lot of blood going through that body. Who dies? In the hallway when Mark was reintegrating, Miss Casey said, your Outtie is going to, and we know the next word in German, so in Germany with the subtitles, the next word was actually die. I don't think Mark can die, he's the main character, but PD died from reintegration. Maybe it isn't possible to survive it. Maybe we don't know if Mark lives until season 3. So Mark has not been back to work since the flooding of the chip. Honestly, flooding the chip didn't do shit. He started the reintegration process in episode 3. 6 episodes later, homie still can't remember what the inside of Lumon looks like. But what if flooding the chip killed his innie? Or the Outtie will die. Or both of them will die and they will be a new person that is a reintegrated person. In season 3, I think we'll find out a lot more people are chipped than we know. Ricken, his friends, townspeople. Irving has a lot to tell us. The action will move from running away from the baddies to protect our friends to running towards the baddies to save the world. Our heroes swear to destroy Lumon for good. Book 3 of the trilogy, Return of the Jedi. Yes, I agree with that. So that goes along with my theory that if they indeed do kill Gemma or Helly, I think one of those women will unfortunately not make it out alive because Mark will never have to choose between one of them. The choice will be made for him. And I do think it will be Gemma. I think he and Helly will carry on together and work to bring down Lumon. A lot of people have talked about Helena redemption arc. Helena is evil, okay? Anything she does is going to save herself. The look of smugness on her face when she talks about them taking care of Irving, of Mr. Bailiff. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you hurt Irving, I'm coming for you personally. We have to mention a funny comment by Groucho the Grouch. I've got a Game of Thrones thing where the revolving is the throne. I think you're not wrong about that. Helly is Daenerys and Helena is Cersei. Love that. Mark Scout is Jon Snow and Mark S is Bran. So Mark S will be the one to experience the revolving. Gemma is Sansa and Miss Huang is Arya. Fields is definitely Walder Frey and Drummond is the Mountain, of course. Brienne of Tarth is herself and Ricken is Rickon. And Jame is Palpatine. That's just funny. Is Cobel Helena's mother? So this is talked about a lot now that the actor who plays Jame is about 13 years older than the actress who plays Cobel. We know when she was a teenager, Jame wasn't an old man. He was probably in his late 20s, if we are to believe the relative age gap. Now, we know that severed employees end up pregnant under mysterious circumstances. We know that Jame may be a serial philanderer. He has several women that come through the birthing center. Perhaps he did get Cobel pregnant using his influence and weirdness and his desire of taking it raw, and perhaps he brought her there and her innie gave birth. We do see Harmony's name in the security room. I do think she is severed or was severed. Perhaps they took her child away from her and perhaps that child is Helena. Now remember that in season 1, when Helly is on the table, the 5th question Mark asks her is, what is the color of your mother's eyes? This obviously is to test her memory, but maybe Helena has never met her mother and doesn't know. Danielle says Irving has been reintegrated since last season. We will see him in the finale. He may be in a new location, but he can still make a phone call. He obviously has some numbers memorized. We will find out who he has been calling and full story. Why would he be that friendly with Bert and at the train if he wasn't remembering? Another scenario, Kier boundaries are like an elevator. His chip gets wiped when he gets to the real world. Well, that would be helpful. That would be cool if there was like a force field or something that you could cross and then your chip goes boop. After the Orbo, I was team Irving is reintegrated. I do think that Irving was talking to Ragabi on the phone. He has been anti-reintegration in the Ragabi method, but he has figured out a way to get memories towards his innie and maybe even from his innie to his outie by messing with his circadian rhythm. We still have a lot to find out about Irving. We know that he's been on the testing floor, so I think maybe I could see him not returning until season 3. I hope that's not the case, but I could see him making a phone call from his new location or kind of coming back under the radar. Pun intended. Cobel wants Cold Harbor to be finished. So Cast is Twisted left a great comment on my Patreon saying Cobel will get them into Cold Harbor. She won't get them out. Think about this. This is the final boss of her brainchild. No matter how she hates Lumon, I still think that part of her who has always felt kind of shafted for how they treated her, the credit they didn't give her, she is 100% self-serving. I do think she will double cross them. A true Benedict Arnold, if you ask me, Cobel. Ed Sishan says, I'm still convinced there will be a tie-in to the American Civil War, Battle of Cold Harbor. If you look up the description of the battle on Wikipedia, it says, the Battle of Cold Harbor was fought during the American Civil War near thousands of Union soldiers were killed or wounded in the frontal assault of June 3rd against the fortified positions of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee's army, an event that compounded the image of Grant's apparent disregard for high casualties. If you think about the Civil War, it was a divide, like innies and outies. Okay, yes, I love that. In the country, a split. I think what we see is an all-out battle between everyone's innies and outies with much violence. Yeah, so we know there's going to be violence. You know, a civil war is a country divided against itself. And Abraham Lincoln even said, a house divided cannot stand. We have had so many themes this season about innies and outies, and are they the same and are they different, and how you can love someone's innie but hate their outie, or even in the case of Helly, you can hate that version of yourself that you know exists but then still want to preserve yourself. And last but not least, Ricken is a goat. So we've talked about this a lot. Ricken's a goat. Jay emailed me, talked about how the goats that are pressed into the face of the mountain when scaling, Ricken was one of those Severance grown goats that gets the human consciousness. Now, I have always kind of just like skipped over this theory because I think it's funny, but I can't think of that much proof to it. But if you recall from the UUR, which if you haven't seen that, go check out my analysis of the UUR. Ricken talks about how his entire life, his birth, was part of an experiment in a way, that both his parents were performance artists and they literally conceived and gave birth to him like for a bit, like for an art project, for an experiment. And even the art project was called like Smells Like Afterbirth. What if they were like, okay, well, this kid was just kind of a prop. We don't care. We'll give it to Lumon for some like handy dandy testing. My final thing that I want to talk about that I've talked about on my lives is the idea of selling Severance as a service, which I didn't coin that term. That was Hax. But this idea that what if they can trigger that Severance chip to go off, not based on a location like it currently does, but based on a feeling. Maybe Cold Harbor is the ultimate test room where all of her innies will come together or switch on and off depending on what she's feeling, because they've refined those personalities and rooms and tamed the tempers to this degree. Now that is something that will truly get a chip in everyone's brain if they knew that they could opt out of unpleasant experiences, or that their brain would automatically do it for them whenever it suspects that their woe, malice, dread, maybe not frolic meters are going too high. Remember, in Gemma's testing, there is a woe meter, so they can test how much woe you're feeling. They have a way to measure temper imbalances. Drummond says to Helena that your tempers are almost back to normal, they're almost balanced. What if there is a way where they have figured out truly how to balance the tempers? They're creating these even-keeled, obedient, Kier obsessed people that never feel any extreme emotion. If you recall, one of Kier's quotes was that it's the precise concoction of each temper that makes a man or a woman who he or she is. What happens when all of that gets set to the same baseline? How would we be, and how would we benefit this massive conglomerate, corporate, overlord, culty, Jesus Kier person if we all had the same balance? And maybe there's a way to package it and sell it like Severance as a service, like you don't have to ever experience going to the dentist, but that it can also just automatically turn off every time you feel those extreme emotions. Anyway, guys, that is what I have for you today. It's getting harder and harder to theorize each week. What are you looking forward to most in the finale? What do you hope that is revealed? What do you think the battle scene is going to be? And where do you think we will end up on the inevitable cliffhanger? Don't forget to mark your calendars for the live that I will be hosting along with HaxDogma. I'll be watching it and then we might go live again after. I'd like to give a special shout out to all of my Patreon family. Thank you to my VIP Waffle Party members. I'd like to thank Davis Crushing, Bo Dierker, Mr. Vaca, Chris Bezeski, Daniel Ariano, Dolores Abernathy, Jim Rodney, Marlon Yamzon, and Matt Winbury. And thank you to everyone else who supports my channel. I will see you guys Thursday, which might be tomorrow, depending on when I edit this video. Let's go. I'm ready. Whatever you guys do, I need you to just hold on until the end, hang in there, and don't get severed. Bye, guys.